Am I the a-hole for telling my aunt she ruined her own relationship with her son? My aunt is a mechanic who opened up her own business 30 years ago. She has one kid, my cousin Jake, 26, and he's always been her shadow when it came to the business. From the time he was young, he was in the shop with her, and he started working there full-time when he turned 18. And he was a hard worker. Doing so much to help keep everything working well, he balanced out my aunt's somewhat abrasive personality, and he made sure everything was where it was supposed to be. He worked the longest hours out of anyone. He wasn't the only person working there either. She hired me, 30 male, and another cousin too, and she has a few other guys on staff. It was always called the family business, and she said it was her legacy to pass down someday. One of the other guys who works for my aunt is Dylan, 30 male. For a few years now, my aunt has taken Dylan under her wing to teach him everything she knows and has treated him like a son. I know Jake was jealous of that and felt left out and insecure about his place in the business. It was very noticeable how my aunt was treating Dylan like the person who'd inherit the shop when she was ready to step down. I brought it up to her once and she told me to mind my own business. Jake carried on working his butt off, and his relationship with his mom grew more and more distant. In March, my aunt announced that when the time came for her to step down, she'd be leaving Dylan in charge and passing over ownership to him. Jake confronted her about the decision, and she told him it was a business decision and he'd still have a job no matter what. Jake told her that all that talk about legacy and it being a family business was BS and he quit. My aunt didn't expect it, but Jake hasn't been back since. Jake told me and our other cousin to stay and not give up on it, but he was going to find somewhere else since his mom had shown how little his effort meant to her. Jake and his mom haven't talked since that day, and he avoids her. She's starting to get all upset now because she doesn't have anyone to stay late and work if a client has a tight deadline. She doesn't have someone making sure everything's running smoothly. That was always Jake. And she's also realizing that he means business because he was so good to her. She mentioned how he hadn't called since that day and won't answer any of her calls. She tried to blame me and my other cousin, saying we ruined her relationship with Jake. She couldn't say how, but she blamed us anyway. I told her she ruined her own relationship with him and she needed to get the heck over herself and face it. I told her she always talked about the shop being her legacy, and she called it a family business, but then passed over her only kid for a random worker who she decided was more like her so deserved it. I told her she'd be lucky if Jake ever speaks to her again. My aunt told me blaming her and being cruel wasn't helping anyone. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. So, she's having sex with Dylan, isn't she? Not the a-hole. See, that's not how I looked at it. Not saying it's not possible, but I saw it as her claiming Dylan as the son she always wanted kind of thing. Reason being is that's how she treats him from what I've seen. Because as much as Jake adored her and was committed to the business, they were very different. OP, why don't you and your other cousin go to another workshop? It's obvious your aunt doesn't understand the meaning of loyalty or having a brain. Look, she knows what she did and blames you two for what happened. Why isn't Dylan staying late? It is his business after all. If I was Jake, I would never break no contact. Your aunt deserves everything she gets. She discarded her son for what she thought was a better model. Well, he wasn't, and the chickens have come home to roost. She's going to be very lonely. This post reminds me of a family member who worked at a daycare or preschool for years. She was the person who opened every morning and knew the operation inside and out. Owner sold the business, and new person brought in their own staff. That is understandable. However, they never appreciated my family member and treated her as if she was a brand new employee off the street. She was also someone who never called in sick. I think she called in twice in 5 years. This is a good trade for the person opening up a business at 6 a.m. every weekday, right? They treated her so bad that she quit. Within less than a month, she heard from folks still there and the parents that most days the place was opening late, sometimes as late as 6:30. Parents were pulling their kids and enrolling them elsewhere, and the owner was scrambling. My family member relished the karma. This made me think of the aunt in this post. She didn't appreciate Jake and what he did and took him for granted. Now that he's left, she is realizing how much he did. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not financially helping my mom after finding out a secret she kept from me for over 20 years? I, 28 male, just learned something that completely reversed my relationship with my mom, 54 female. I always thought we were close. She was a single parent who raised me on her own after my dad left us when I was just a baby. She told me he had nothing to do with us. We were not rich when I was a kid, and I've always had a lot of respect for what she did for us. I took money to pay for uni, worked part-time, and now that I have a decent job and some savings, I've been helping her every now and then with groceries, bills, and such. Anyways, a few weeks ago, I got a message on my very active Facebook from a man who I didn't know. First, I thought it was a joke or scam or something when it read, "I think I could be your dad," but he sent me photos of him and my mom when they were younger. My resemblance to him was close too. I confronted my mom, to which she started to cry and admitted that, yes, he was actually my father. She never told him she was pregnant, so he left. He had no idea that I existed at all, until recently when he probably saw my baby pics on Facebook or our old mutual friend statuses put together. I don't know if or when to meet him though. He seems nice, stable, and I assume married with kids. Our text messages were quite long and detailed, and personal, hence excluded them from this post. He says how he would have been there, would have raised me. I get emotional thinking about it in my head, but this is where the conflict starts. My mom just got fired prior to my dad messaging me. She asked if I could help pay her rent for a few months, and I said no. I told her I needed space. I mean, it's a lot to take in when your own mother had just been lying to you for your entire life and kept me from a father who loved me. Obviously, no mother is perfect, but I felt cheated. Okay, she was young and maybe in over her head, but she stole a relationship with my dad from me. How can she expect my help like nothing has happened? I'm not cutting her off forever though, just don't think I owe her money now, especially not when I still need to try and make sense of it all. Trust takes years to build, seconds to break, and forever to repair. Take the time you need. Thank you sums it up perfectly. I think it hurts that I did trust her completely. Not the a-hole. Those are the worst kind of betrayals. I can't imagine why she made that choice. Unless the guy was abusive, no indication he was, she made her life harder, and hope he's immeasurably different. All that time she stole from them. Why? Not the a-hole. You definitely deserve time and space to process all of this. Aside from denying you a right to have a dad in your childhood and life, her secret also kept medical history from you that could have had a huge impact on your life. She also deprived your dad of knowing he had a child for nearly 3 decades. Exactly. It's not just about emotions, but also facts that shaped my life without me even knowing. From what you've written, though, give her more time to explain herself as well. She went through this alone for a reason. There's a reason she didn't tell him. It might be a better reason than you think, and she now has to juggle whether to double down and tell you or let it pass. Really good point. It would have been hard for her to open up about it. I hope when that time comes, she's willing to really talk about it honestly. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my dad it's easy to see which wife he actually loved when he complained about people setting him up after the death of his second wife? My dad was married twice, one to mine and my brother's, 29 and 30 male's mom, and the second time to our half-sibling's mom, 19 female and 20 male. Mine and my brother's mom died when we were 7 and 8, and he remarried a little over a year later. Dad started dating his second wife 6 months after mom died, and he'd been on dates with other women before he met his second wife. We met a couple of those dates. My dad's second wife died 2 years ago, and Dad has not dated at all since, and some of his family and friends have tried to set him up with women. It ticked him off, and he ranted at them about how insensitive it is to him when he lost his wife recently, and how could anyone expect him to move on that fast. My brother told him he didn't have that problem when mom died, and he stormed off telling Dad to go F himself. Dad hadn't expected my brother to say that kind of thing, and he was angry at the people who tried to set him up. After all that went down, he tried to talk to me about it, and he was whining about people thinking he could move on, and how she was barely cold in the ground. I told him it was so easy to see which wife he actually loved with that attitude. I told him he was dating 5 months after mom died. 5. I said he was talking to the kids whose mom was so easy for him to move on from, to the kids who had to freaking deal with it when he remarried after just more than a year. I said if he wanted to get sympathy, he should go to our half-siblings, since it's their mom he's so in love with that he couldn't move on from her. Dad told me it wasn't like that, and my brother and I needed to look at it differently. I told him if he was in our shoes, he wouldn't be saying that. Then he got mad because I didn't apologize or say I didn't mean it, and because my brother told him to F himself again when he tried calling him to talk about it. He said we have no right to judge him or decide his feelings. Am I the a-hole? Now for the comments. Not the a-hole. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that this isn't the first time you felt that your dad didn't give as much importance to your mom's life as you would have liked or supported you and your brother's grief. You would be right about that, but this is where he just seemed insensitive toward us with it. You know, that makes me mad. Not the a-hole, but I'm with your brother and you that your dad sure is. Was he in such a hurry to get married the first time because he wanted a woman to raise his young children and now he doesn't need to? Anyway, not the a-hole. 100% this is the right answer. He spent 6 months dealing with 2 young children and their grief all by himself and realized he couldn't do it. He needed to find a replacement ASAP. Now the half-siblings are old enough to not rely on him heavily in that way, so the need for a replacement isn't pressing. His driving motivation has always been himself and what he needs. OP is not the a-hole, but his dad sure is. This right here. According to kids' ages, Dad might have still been in his 20s when he was widowed. Also, the first wife being roughly the same age is a tragic death. Accident, disease, whatever. She was a young mom who died, so there's that aspect of it all too. Men, most of the time, find a replacement fast. That's just a fact. The younger the widower, the faster the replacement, particularly with small children. Last story. Am I the a-hole for blowing up at my parents for something my adult sister did? I, 26 female, have a sister, Amy, 28 female, who has always had a difficult relationship with food. She was bullied as a kid and turned to food for comfort. As an adult, she still struggles with self-control, especially around things she finds appetizing. Our parents have never set boundaries with her around food, and that's carried into adulthood. She currently lives with them, and they do all the grocery shopping and cooking. My husband, 28 male, recently had a birthday, and I planned a surprise party. I sent him out of the house for a few hours so I could set up and asked my parents to come help. I specifically asked them not to bring Amy. Setting up involved putting out snacks, drinks, and a homemade cake with frosting. They showed up with Amy anyway, saying it wouldn't be fair to exclude her. I gave her a few small tasks and specifically asked her not to touch any of the food until guests arrived, but I was too busy to keep a constant eye on her. At one point, I went into the kitchen and found Amy with the fridge open, eating the frosting out of the mixing bowl. She had eaten nearly half of it. As soon as she saw me, she burst into tears and said she only meant to try a little but couldn't stop. My parents heard us and came in. My mom said it wasn't that big of a deal since the cake was untouched, and I still had enough frosting for a crumb coat, but I had planned to do specific cake decorations, and now there wasn't enough frosting. I didn't have the time or ingredients to make more. My dad suggested going to the store to buy a tub of pre-made frosting, saying it was the same thing. I explained my husband tries to avoid a lot of the ingredients found in store-bought frosting and wouldn't want that. My dad said to just not tell him, since he wouldn't even know the difference. That suggestion was super frustrating to me. I told my parents that they couldn't convince me that this was no big deal, and that they had allowed this by not setting boundaries with Amy's binge eating and by bringing her to set up. They told me to back off and be more sensitive to my sister, and that it wasn't her fault. I responded by saying that I was angrier at them because at least Amy felt bad while they were trying to downplay the situation. They got upset and said it wasn't fair to blame them for Amy's choices, and that she was an adult and they can't control her. They also said that they were trying to help by giving suggestions, and that I was being stubborn by shutting all of them down. They ended up leaving, and now they're giving me the silent treatment, even though Amy has apologized for eating the frosting. Am I the a-hole for involving them in this? Not the a-hole. You knew this could be a problem. You asked your parents to leave Amy at home. Your parents refused. You asked them to keep her out of the kitchen. They refused. Amy ruined your plans for the cake and your parents gave unhelpful suggestions. And they're mad because you were right? Because you spoke up? Nope. It's easier to forgive someone for being wrong than it is to forgive them for being right. Got to love how they tried to guilt OP by saying, "Don't blame Amy." And then when OP goes, "I'm not, I'm blaming you," they turn around and blame Amy. Not the a-hole. Because you requested that they not bring her to help set up and they did. When they brought her, one of them should have stayed with her. That being said, Amy's now 28 and aware of her problem. She has to own that. If she's not in therapy, that's something that she needs to be in. She should have declined coming if she thought she wouldn't be able to control herself. Seriously, the way Amy is being discussed both in the post and in the comment, it's like she's mentally disabled or something. She's a 28-year-old fully grown adult. Yes, she obviously has a mental illness, but she is 100% responsible for her own actions. This is her fault. This isn't OP's parents' fault. This is Amy's fault. Amy messed up. Amy made a choice to destroy her brother-in-law's birthday cake. This is why I like that phrase, "Your mental illness isn't your fault, but it is your responsibility." Amy is an adult and is responsible for her own well-being, and she needs to get therapy. I do think the parents are somewhat at fault, though, for how they have handled it all these years, and how they are still handling it. But ultimately, Amy needs to put in the work for her own healing and hold herself accountable.